Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Good, great. First, I wanted to thank Tanya and Kayleen and the committee, and welcome to any newcomers. This has been an amazing event. I didn't think I was going to be able to hang out all day, but I did. And I got lots of insights from Rogelio, the judge, Danielle, and Ken, and Bill, and Jennifer, and I'm grateful for all the service that you guys are doing. According to Tanya this morning, there are 18 countries represented today, so congratulations. And I'm actually seeing people that I actually know. They actually said hi. So, and I'm looking at them right now. So awesome to see you guys. It's been a while. My name is Nick B., and I'm a grateful member of the Worldwide Fellowship of Al-Anon and Alateen. I have a sponsor. I also sponsor. I have a home group. I have a member of multiple groups, and I have a lot of service positions, including I'm the public outreach or PICPC coordinator for Northern California for this particular panel. If my sponsor is listening, I will answer the question that she always asks prior to having a conversation. I am spiritually fit today. I was asked to speak about a tradition or concept that I'm passionate about, and today I'll share briefly on Concept 1, because that's been coming up for me for about a month. Concept 1 in the Al-Anon world says that the ultimate responsibility and authority for Al-Anon world services belongs to the Al-Anon groups. Now, I have read the AA Big Book, all 164 pages, because my sponsor told me to a while back. My qualifiers are everywhere. And I won't mention them. There are just too many to count, but I will tell you that one of them died last month from the disease. Another one relapsed in this country a few weeks ago, and another one relapsed in another country a few weeks ago, and I'm still okay. So that's how the disease works in my life. I found since the pandemic started, a lot of things I'm going to touch on. And I only have 10 minutes. It's a vignette, so I'm supposed to fade in and kind of fade out without borders. That's the definition of a vignette. Since the pandemic began, I found Concept 1 to greatly help me with my recovery. And I'll quote some readings from Al-Anon's Path to Recovery that start on page 247. I'm not going to read anything, but it says, whenever we participate, we expand on our own recovery. Al-Anon's structure is described often as an upside-down pyramid, probably much like AA's, with the groups at the very top. And members represent the groups, the districts, and areas from areas to the world service. And at the narrow point of the pyramid are the trustees of the staffs at world service. And many people marvel at the structure because it's an organization that's volunteers, and how could it work at all? So it makes sense, right? The concepts allow group conscience to form at the very level, and opinions are then delegated, and authority allows the groups to weigh in and participate in the decision-making process, and then accept those decisions at the top of the pyramid, and then we learn to live with them. Tradition, too, reminds us that the group conscience is there's but one authority, a loving God, as he may express himself in our group conscience, and our trusted servants. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. So in our group, a higher power guides the group conscience, and the Concept 1 tells us that the group conscience has the ultimate authority for Al-Anon world services. So we follow the guidance of a higher power at every level. And that's it for the context piece from all the literature. So what happened? The pandemic hit, right? And when the pandemic hit, people scrambled, as I did. You know, I don't know about you, but I need meetings. I need a lot of meetings, and I need frequent contact with my fellows. And many groups and districts and areas sought guidance from World Service, and World Service, in their own way and pace, tried to be as helpful as they could. And basically, they said, you know, they provided two pieces of guidance, which was within their ability to respond in a short period of time. And they said, one thing, groups that become electronic cannot be listed physically, and groups that are physical cannot be electronic. So you can't have both in terms of registering the worldwide database, you know. And so their database and IT staff can handle much less things than, let's say, a Google or an Instagram account, which is okay. That's where they are. WSO2 found quickly, probably like AA, that their main source of income, which is literature, just dropped significantly. Their main source of income vanished overnight. And most of their fixed expenses are salaries. So they sent messages out asking areas and districts and groups that since we're no longer traveling, we don't longer have rent, to please send their money to help them avoid a bunch of layoffs. At the same time, the groups being nimble and applying concept one, which is we're responsible to make sure that our group is safe and is meeting, they went on to take care of themselves. So applying concept one, the purpose of participation leads to effective decision making. The pandemic would have none of that, right? Within weeks, a couple of groups transformed into Zoom, WhatsApp, Facebook, Google Meet, Duo, and other mediums, and started holding their own meetings. Other fellows formed other groups. Al-Anon Without Borders, for example, was launched and took off within a couple of weeks. They had 1,000 people in each of those sessions. Adult Children of Al-Anon focused meetings in Spanish. This is the Hispanic arm of the fellowship that has its roots in the U.S. Started the worldwide meetings, and they've been meeting 3 times a week all over the world and are joining different countries. And so by the end of March, at least 50% of the groups were online on Zoom or otherwise. And by the end of April, I think almost everyone was, with the exception of the groups that didn't want to have presence. So I know, I'm personally aware of 2 or 3 groups that have just died because they couldn't get their act together. So concept one shows me where my responsibility is to take, right? So there's no intergroup or information service or district or area or that can take place of my responsibility as a member of a group of my relationship to its conduct. So what that means is that I started plugging in to different meetings. I started plugging into Al-Anon Without Borders. I started plugging into the Hispanic Al-Anon Adult Children, and I started sharing, right? Because so what happened with the pandemic, you guys have already said it, but I've been saying this since the beginning, right? It took a pandemic, because we've been saying need to go electronic for years. And in the Al-Anon world, they said, oh no, it'll never happen. It'll never, ever happen, right? It took a pandemic, right, for everybody to figure out how to use their phones in less than 3 weeks. Right? So for the people that go, oh, Zoom is really, really bad. No. Zoom for me has expanded my ability to reach people worldwide. Anytime I get a flyer, I send it to all my peeps on every medium that I have in multiple languages, such that, for example, there's an A Without Borders meeting. They took the Al-Anon off because I guess you can't use the name because it's not associated with a service structure. So A Without Borders is coming up in 3 weeks. Mary Pearl, which many of you have heard, because she does both sides, it's the first time we're going to offer interpretation in Spanish. So we're going to open up Mary Pearl's experience to people outside the fellowship. Since I started sharing the flyers, people have been plugging into their own groups. And within 3 weeks in South America, for example, I was sharing the flyers, and now all of a sudden, I'm getting the flyers first. Those people have been plugged in. And it's amazing. AA covers 92% of the world in terms of meetings. Al-Anon is not that far. There are meetings in 133 countries out of 195, so it's about 7 out of 10. And we should have more people because, they say that, for every alcoholic, there's 4 family members that are nuts, right? So our percentages should be higher, but they're not. I have only 1 minute left before I fade into the darkness. So what this has taught me is that it's incredible to be of service no matter where you are. I picked up 2 more sponsees overseas last month that are looking for a deeper understanding of the service and the service manual. Yesterday, a fellow from South America said, hey, we're having an anniversary meeting. We'd like to have an Alateen from a different country. So I reached out to Denver. I got the sponsor's name from Mexico. He hooked me up with the Alateen in Yucatan, and now they're talking about the Alateen sharing in South America later this month. That's how the power of 12-step has enabled every single one of us to be of service and to carry the message for those who are suffering. And I'll close with this. I finally figured, I took the test. Me and my son took the test. I kind of got a B- on the alcoholic piece because I really like to party, but that allergy of the body just never hit. He aced his, right? So I'm much more leaning on the A side. And so when people ask me, what's the difference between a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and a meeting of Al-Anon, I say it like this, to just be very blunt. You guys meet, you guys meaning the AAs meet, to make sure that that newcomer that goes in the room does not drink for 24 hours. Al-Anons meet so that we don't give a shit if you do or not. And my time is up. Thank you so much for allowing me to be of service.
Nick, thank you so much for your share. Thank you. Okay, this session is scheduled until 4:15 p.m. So we are going to be taking a 15-minute break around 3 o'clock. Remember, this is Pacific Daylight Time, so you'll have to make the calculations for wherever you are located. I am now delighted to introduce our main speakers for this session, Alex and Melissa from Rochester, New York, speaking on the 3 legacies in relationships. Alex and Melissa?
Well, I get to start. I get the pleasure of starting. So I'm Alex. I'm alcoholic. I'm the hype man. That's my job. I hype it up for the main event. That's my wife. So I just want to get that right out of the way. We get to do this quite a bit, and this relationship talk, and that's always how it goes. And it's a pleasure. You know, my sponsor says he likes being asked, but he hates to do. And that's kind of how it is for me. I want to be asked, but then I'm nervous all day. And there's people on here that I just respect so much, you know, and I was, when my wife told me that we got asked to do it, I was helping paint one of my sponsees' houses because he kept complaining about it. So I'll just help you. And I remember I was like, oh, you know, I'm just getting nervous, you know, and as we get here, I get excited to share the experience that I've had with you. My wife and I went to pray before, Melissa and I went to pray before the meeting. It's one of the reasons I love her. I looked up and she was holding my dog's hand while we were praying. It was just awesome. You know, and I remember just as I was praying to God, it just kind of hit me like it's been a long walk, you know, to get to a place where, you know, I could be asked to share my experiences with being in a relationship, you know, outside of maybe a therapist office, you know. And so I'm just grateful for it. You know, my sobriety date is January 19th, 2005. I have a sponsor. I am a sponsor of, you know, a bunch of men, and I have a home group called the Love and Service Group. We have a little rivalry with Kent's group, with your guys' group out there, which who's first, who's the real one, you know, all that's always fun, a lot of fun. I have a profound respect for you all. I know that there's people in this room that have had a profound respect on my relationship with my wife, and the one is her sponsor, Debbie, has been so helpful to Melissa and us just in helping, you know, from her side of it, obviously, and then Don L., who you guys are so lucky to hear later tonight. I'm so grateful for Don because he shares the truth about his life, and some of it's unflattering. And the first time I ever heard him talk about some of those things, it hit me in a place in my soul. I had just never heard anything like that, you know. And I think the biggest gift that I can receive in Alcoholics Anonymous is the gift of your transparency, you know, your humanness, you know. And I've called Don into pretty unflattering times, and he's always picked up the call. I know he's very busy. He's picked up the call, and he's been so helpful to me. And I'm just incredibly grateful. We're gonna kind of go back and forth, right? So we broke this up. We're gonna talk about spiritual principles with finances, with sex, with autonomy and being ourselves, and we're gonna split it up and go back and forth, right? So, I just want to talk a little bit about who I was before I got to AA, and I'll just give you a story, right? So I dated a girl. I used to always say I dated a woman. My wife later found out that she was like 15, and so was I. But I used to say I dated a woman, you know. And you know, my mom used to wake us up in the morning and for us to catch the school bus, right? It wasn't a real healthy deal, you know what I mean? I got out of my first rehab when I was 15, and she seemed to solve the problem for a little while. And my parents were desperate to solve what was wrong with me real bad, and so we like lived together. And it wasn't real healthy. And not long after that, right, I get to this idea that she's going to find someone better than me. And my great grand sponsor says that when we go to Alcoholics Anonymous, we better bring our fastball. Don't be scared to bring the fastball because the audience will catch it. We won't drop it. And so I'm going to bring you guys my fastball. And some of these things are a little bit like embarrassing, but I don't think I'm unique. And, I started learning about females and relationships probably around 8. And the way I did that was through pornography, right? Like not the healthiest way to learn about relationships. And so what I learned is that men are big and strong and tough, and they have to be, very well endowed, which you're not when you're 8 years old. And I learned that women are objects. I learned that this is what sex looks like. I learned these things that I didn't know I learned these things. It's just what I learned. And when I'm 15 years old and I get in this relationship with this girl, not long after that little brief period where my alcoholism subsided, the immense inadequacy started to come up. And I became convinced she was going to cheat on me. I knew she was going to find someone better. And I'm like the neurotic, right? So based on how she talks, based on what she says, based on, the footprints in the snow, I know what's really happening here, and I'm nuts. And me and her do this dance for like 2 or 3 years when I'm, and I would go in and out of rehabs and detoxes. And I remember one day I was convinced, she told me she was going out with her friend to the mall. And I'm just going to give you a glimpse into me, right? So I know she's going out to the mall. She said she's going to the mall. And I'm like, she's not going to the mall. She's having someone over, obviously, right? So I had a key to her parents' house, not her house. But so I end up getting like a liter of vodka and a pack of Newports. And I have this vision in my head. I'm going to break into her house. When they come home and it's dark out, she's going to walk into the kitchen, and I'm going to be sitting there with a cherry, just the cherry in my cigarette burning. And her and him are going to walk in, and I'm going to say, gotcha. And then I'm going to kill him. I'm going to fight, and we're going to, all that. And so this is my fantasy. And so that's what happens. I'm breaking out of key. I went in the house. I'm sitting on the kitchen table, and I'm drinking my vodka, and I'm killing time. And then, I don't know what happened, but much later I ended up passing out at the kitchen table, and she comes home with her best girlfriend to find me in the dark, passed out at her kitchen table. That's a real embarrassing moment, but this is who you're dealing with. This is what I'm bringing to the game. I just want to let you know who you're dealing with. And so Bob B says that we have the same relationship over and over and over again. Right. And the reason is because we're bringing ourselves to the game. That's what we're bringing. And I didn't realize this until I did a sex inventory in AA, but I realized that I got all of my esteem through women. I got all my validation through this girl, and how she looked at me, what she said to me, how she thought of me. If it would go up and down. When she walked out of the room, my self-esteem left. It wasn't just like a girl. It was my whole esteem was gone, and I had to hang on to that for dear life, for God's sakes, And so when I got sober, I was deathly afraid of females. I wasn't the guy that was out there like trying to get with women. I was like the guy that was really scared of you and to stay away. Like I remember the first time I even started talking to a girl, I was like 10 months sober, and I threw up out of anxiety because it's like, I cannot go back to being that guy. Right. And so what I find after, I can only last a certain amount of time before I started having some relations. And I would find women that were like really like me. They had really low self-esteem, and they wouldn't challenge me, and I wouldn't have to become vulnerable. And I could, I could objectify them. This is very like uncomfortable to talk about, but it's just reality for me. And it went that way, and I was so scared. And then about 2 years sober, 3 years sober, maybe I became friends with Melissa, my wife. And I don't know how to have friends with I don't know how to be friends with females. I don't have that experience. And we became friends. And after being friends for about, I don't even know how long, not long, 6 months. We're talking like every day on the phone, right? After a couple of months, we're talking every day on the phone for hours about family, AA. She loves AA the way I love AA. You know what I mean? She just loves AA, and so do I. And so we just jive. And after about 3 to 6 months or something, I can't remember, she comes to me and she says, I like you. And that's scary. That's scary business because we have like a real relationship. I don't have these words at that time. I don't know what's happening. I just know I'm so scared. And my response is, I forget what I said, something like, well, that's good for you, or something like, something awful, right? And we begin this dance for the next year of us having sex, and then me breaking up with her. But we never were dating, right? She'll talk about that. Like I'm breaking up with someone I'm not dating. And I ended up talking to my sponsor at the time, and my sponsor's like, well, normal people only talk to people they're not romantically invested in 15 minutes every 3 days. So I'm like, that's a great idea. That's what I have to do, And so I'm trying to talk to her like every 3 days for a couple of minutes, and I'm hurting her. You know, I'm really, really hurting her because of my fear. And after about, I don't know, we were like talking like that for like a year, I think. And then I finally did an inventory with a different sponsor about this thing. And we took a look at it, and there's a couple of things that I found, you know, and the biggest reason I didn't want to have a relationship with Melissa was because I know it's probably surprising to many, but fear, right? And what's the fear? The fear is that I'm going to get hurt. The fear is I'm going to get into a relationship with her, and I'm going to become vulnerable, and I'm going to become a stalker and a psycho, and I'm going to become convinced she's cheating on me, and I'm going to become so uncomfortable on the inside that I tried to like control her. And then eventually I'm going to drink again and get back into rehab, and I just can't. This is what goes on in my mind, and I don't know that. My mind tells me all kinds of other things that's wrong with her, right? It's her fault. It's her, you know? And finally we do this inventory, and we unlock the key. And the question he asked me is, dude, I think I was like 2 or 3 years sober. And he said something. He was with a woman at that time for 8 years. And he said something that unlocked the key for me. And he said, it was his fiance at the time, if she leaves him, that he would be so sad. He'd be devastated. I mean, he loves her, you know, but he'd be okay. Like he wouldn't have a collapse. You know what I mean? He has a relationship with God. He has sponsees. He has a home group. He's got road dogs in AA. Like he'll be okay. And he posed that question to me. If you get in the game with Melissa and it turns out that she leaves or she hurts you or she whatever, would you be okay? You know, like, can you take a leap of faith? Is God real in your life or not? And I realized for a second, I said, holy, I'm a different guy. Like I've had a transformational experience through the process of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I often think, how do we grow in AA? You know, how do I grow in being a husband today? It's not by thinking about it or talking about it in AA. It's by being a husband. It's by showing up. It's by getting off the bench, getting in the game, and making a crap load of mistakes. And I'm going to share my mistakes with you guys through the rest of this talk and the lessons that I've learned through the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, and I'm so grateful that I've had a woman that's strong enough to weather my mistakes. You know, there's been a lot of them, and some of them are pretty bad, you know, and she's been there in the game to weather them. I don't think someone that's Melissa's very strong, you know, and has been able to allow me to grow into who I really am. You know, I'll say this, and I'm going to pass it over to her, is that I grew up in a family. My mom has OCD and a high lot of anxiety. She's a hoarder, like a real hoarder. Like we could be on a TV show, you know, kind of thing, right? And my dad was emotionally and verbally abusive to her. Like a story is, I don't even tell you guys a story in general way, but I watched men degrade women my whole life growing up. I watched a woman become submissive to a man. I watched a man have power. I never seen my parents hug or kiss. I created this database of information of what a relationship is. I didn't question it. I didn't know. This is what it is. This is what I witnessed my whole life. And I bring this to the game with Melissa, you know, and the rest of my life from that point when I've entered in this relationship with her has been really unlearning and then learning, right? What did Chuck see? Uncover, discover, discard, right? And that's been the story for me, you know, and you can't do that unless you're in the game. And I'm so grateful that fear hasn't stopped me from experiencing the love and the beauty of a relationship with Melissa. And I hope to be able to share that with you for the rest of our conversation. So Melissa, I'll kick it to you.
Okay. Hi guys. I'm Melissa. I'm an alcoholic. So excited to be here. Super excited. I wasn't sure if I could come to this conference for a while because my sister was supposed to get married over Labor Day, but that changed because of COVID, and I went online and registered, and I checked the little box that said, could you share about a story of a tradition or a concept? And I checked it. Yes, I could do that. And I thought nobody will ask me to do it because I got to speak for real last year at this. And then Tanya called me and left me a message, and I thought, oh my God, I have to think of like, what would a 10-minute story be? What could I talk about? I don't know. I'm so flustered. I haven't any idea. I don't know what to tell her. I can do it, but I can't tell you. And then she said, you know, oh, some people canceled and we're looking for replacements. Do you guys want to speak for like the whole time? And I'm so honored and excited to be able to do that. You know, it's really is a privilege. My sobriety date is February 21st, 2001. So I've been sober in AA for 19 years. I got sober when I was 20. My home group is the same as Alex's. We belong to the Love and Service Group in Rochester, New York. Debbie is my sponsor, never knowing that she had a husband who belonged to Love and Service in California. But I think it's just a great AA name. You know, our groups are a lot alike. Rochester Love and Service is older, and that really makes Kent mad and jealous. Like, he would really kind of win on all costs, but that one bothers him, and so that's okay with me. But sometimes in my head, I actually kind of like fantasize a little bit, like, what if like this was all one group? What if I had this Love and Service at my Love and Service? Sometimes my Love and Service, like, they get really tired of me, and they don't want to talk anymore about traditions or concepts or why we should talk to the newcomers. And so I just, like, you guys have a great group out there. Alex and I went and got some food during like the lunch break, and a home group member, a friend of ours, called just to talk to Alex for a couple minutes. And Alex had him on speakerphone, and Alex said, "Oh, we're going to speak on this, like, we have to go to this panel and speak." And what our friend heard is that we were both going to joint couples counseling with each other. So he said, "Oh, I used to have to go to double counseling with my wife too." And Alex, I mean, I get this fear too, you know, like when you're not super understanding what someone is saying to you and you just agree. Alex is like, yep. I said, that's not what we're doing. We're not going to counseling together. We're talking about our relationship and AA. Well, I mean, and, you know, but we have gone to counseling together, you know, on Zoom and over the phone and in person. So I got to speak last year at this convention. I actually saved it in my phone. Is the screenshot. I woke up one morning at like 6 o'clock to go to school, to be a teacher at school. And Kent had texted me, and I keep it in my phone. I took a screenshot of it. Would you like to, I want to talk to you about presenting on the 3 Legacies at the Unity and Service Conference. Would you call me? And it was just like, I mean, I have 3 very important questions that I've been asked in my life. And the first question was when I hit my bottom and wanted to die, my parents picked me up and they said, "Don't you think you have a problem with alcohol?" That's number 1. And then number 2 is Alex said, "Would you marry me?" at Starbucks, which I always think is AAQ. And then number 3, Ken said, "Hey, do you want to speak at this conference?" You know, it doesn't get that much better. So I want to talk about, my notes are on this computer over here. Talk about our relationships and how we use the principles of the steps and the traditions and the concepts to do that. I will tell you that I've been involved in service in AA. I love doing it. I've been a GSR and a DCM, but really I've like had a fire and passion for AA, being involved in the intergroup where I live here in Rochester. And the most that has been is I served on the board of trustees at an intergroup. And that's for me where I saw the concepts like come alive, right? Like we have this tiny little version of like what it looks like at GSO, and the concepts are very real there. It's also kind of cool because we're in New York and we have like same like laws that apply to us. And that's where this stuff just came over top of me. You know, also I searched long and hard and far in an anonymous fellowship to find a sponsor, Debbie, who's not on social media. I took about a year to find her. I heard a tape of her in Iceland and I sent out on a search to find her and found her a year later. And to have a sponsor who's involved in that stuff and paradoxically is also like super glamorous, you know what I mean? Sometimes I think like so much is wrong with you. You like that stuff, nobody else does. But then I have this like most informed, glamorous sponsor, and I get to bring it to my sponsees. Right now I'm doing, we were doing conference call, but then we switched to Zoom concept studies with my sponsees and a service sponsee. And I'm also doing a tradition Zoom meeting with everyone in my lineage. And so it's been exciting. I love this stuff. When I was in rehab, they talked about how the 12 steps and a higher power could like run your life. And I thought like, my life is bad. You know, I was 20 and homeless and arrested and in debt and wanted to die. Like, I thought like this other thing might work better for me. Let me try it. And then I got involved in the traditions when I had a boyfriend and actually met him in rehab. We moved in together and I had about a year and a half sober, and he started to use heroin all the time. But I had a home group that was really invested in the traditions, and they said these traditions can help you at AA and outside of it. And I just saw like, oh my God, that really does work, you know. And so I've like learned that this stuff can happen in my life so much. I would say with the 3 Legacies, the only thing that I'm really going to say about the steps during my talk today is that the most important thing is that when I'm living in the 12th step, I'm the best wife that I can be. So when it comes to our relationship, like that is the 12th step that makes me who I can be, right? I'm the best mom. I'm the best like daughter, teacher, wife. Like when I live in the 12th step, no matter what it looks like, right? If it's sponsorship or if it's going to a meeting. One time I went to a jail meeting and nobody in the jail was very interested, but my favorite guard wanted to know if he was an alcoholic, right? Like anytime I'm involved in the 12th step, like I'm going to be the best in my relationship. We have been asked to speak about our relationship a couple of times, and we did this one time, and we were talking about Emily, which is my daughter from that first boyfriend, but Alex's daughter now, and he raises her with me. And Emily is very cute. She is very cute. That is what she's good at. She's cute. She knows she's cute. Boys know she's cute. Every boy she's ever liked has liked her. It's like the opposite of my experience ever. And she has a type. Her boys, they all look the same. They're all kind of cute too. They're thin. They got some hair that they can kind of, move around with. And she has a type. And Alex said to me one time, he said, "Do you have a type?" And I thought, like, what do all of the like boys or men that I have liked have in common? They've been heroin addicts, or no, heroin users. They've all used heroin intravenously. I mean, I guess that's my type, So that's my type. Alex is not a heroin addict. He doesn't want me to put that out there, but he's done those things. And one of the things that like if I just talk about my relationship, like the history of it, I didn't really have relationships. I've sponsored women, and I think they fall into two categories. One is that there's someone who's never in a relationship, like maybe every so often, but they're just so afraid that they can't be in them. And that's where I felt like I was so afraid of what everyone thought of me. Like I wasn't going to be able to do that. It wasn't right. I was sure that you knew that I was sucked and awful. And so, no. And then I find this other category is women that are always in a relationship, right? They typically have one started before they leave the one they're in. And they do it because they're so afraid, right? Everyone knows that they're awful. If they don't have this relationship, like who are they going to be? You're going to know that they're horrible. And I find that they all go down to the same root, fear and lack of God and alcoholism. But I was one that like, I didn't really have relationships. I'd add them in my head. And sometimes I, hung out with my friends' boyfriends and did things that I shouldn't have done with my friends' boyfriends, but I didn't have one. And so my first relationship was really the ones like where like he knew he was in it and I knew I was in it. It was like when I was sober, and that was my boyfriend that I met in rehab who couldn't stay sober. But I got Emily out of that. Emily's my daughter. She's 16. She's a great part of our life. And I bring that up right now is because I meet a lot of other women in AA who have had broken relationships and have a child or two, you know what I mean? And they say to me, like, you're so lucky. Alex is a great father, right? He talked about his family life and what it looked like, but he had a really loving father, like that was a great father. And Alex loves kids, and he is a great father. And sometimes women will say to me like, oh, you're so lucky. Like my boyfriend right now doesn't really love kids, he doesn't always want to do it. He's like the babysitter. And I think a lot about like our concepts when it comes to that. Concept 11 talks about how we have our trustees, and then they have the best possible like committee members, and we have these servants at GSO. It says here, those who work with the trustees, their quality and dedication or lack of these characteristics will make or break our structure. And that is something for me that I looked for in a relationship. When I got into a relationship, like, was I going to be in a relationship with a man who loved my daughter and saw how all of this could be in his life too? Or was I not going to? We look for the best people to fill these roles. And so I say that, if you're listening to me and you're a single mom and you want a relationship and you think like, wow, you got lucky, like, no, right? Like, let's make sure that the people that are filling those roles are the best possible. And that took me a couple of years of sobriety to come to. So Alex and I are like going to go back and forth about what these topics are that we came up with. We are on different computers and different screens. Sometimes I've done AA on Zoom with him and he takes the mouse and he scrolls through everyone. I just want to look at the speaker. I want to have acknowledge that. And so we're just not going to be able to work together. So we're on different screens in our house. He's in his office. And I just want to say that all of those big books that you see behind him are mine. So just so you know that those are not his, those are mine. All right. So that is all for me to start. And Alex, it's your turn again.
Thank you, Melissa. I thought it's hours. Hours? No, hours? I don't know. Anyway, so it's we're going to talk about a little bit like autonomy and being ourselves. She's great, isn't she? She's awesome. I do love her. Yeah, she is. I agree. So, one of the stories I thought about this when she was talking, when I realized I really loved Melissa, was we were in an apartment I had before. She lived in Buffalo, an hour away from where I lived. And so her and Emily were up. Emily was probably like 3 or 4, I think, maybe. And she was putting Emily to bed for a nap. And the story she was telling Emily, like her bedtime story for her nap, was the story of Bill and Bob with Akron, but it was Batman and Robin, and the Joker was alcohol. And I thought, this I love her. This is it. I just knew, you know what I mean? I just knew, that's to my heart, And so that's kind of where we come from. And don't you love when, I just hear Melissa talk about it made me so happy when women go to her and say, "You're so lucky." I said, "Yeah, that's nice to hear. I like that." I like to keep saying it. Yeah, shake your head. Anyway, all right. So we're going to talk about autonomy and being ourselves. So I talked a little bit about having broken ideas. And so one of the biggest defects of character that I bring to the table is that I believe I have to have an image. It's probably one of the biggest defects I have in my life outside of a relationship, is that I have to have an image. I've developed this idea that I have to be somebody, and it has to look a certain way. I can't ever make mistakes. I have to be strong. I can't cry. I have to always know the right thing. Things should come easy to me. I should always be able to figure out the information right away. I should be looked upon as some kind of a leader or in a heroic way. Like, these are the ideas somehow that came up in my mind, and I get a tremendous amount of fear when they're not being met. You know what I mean? I'm constantly seeking validation from people. I found a place in my life, we're talking about like a second surrender. About 5 or 6 years sober, I found myself in a second surrender place where I was very, very active in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've never not been active in AA since I got sober, taking the 12 steps. But I found that there's a big difference between AA activity for the basis of what you think about me versus a relationship with God and trying to be a service. And I found myself at 5 or 6 years sober. I'd gotten a job in a corporate environment. Every day I was convinced was the day they were going to fire me. Every day. I remember my boss called me in the office one day, and I went to my person next to me. I said, "Well, give me the box, man. It's been nice working with you." And he gave me Employee of the Year. I used to wait until 3 a.m. when everyone's asleep to log into I access to my executive vice president's meeting minutes. I shouldn't. But she had 1,000-person organization. I would wait until the middle of the night so I could log into her file so no one would know and read her meeting minutes from her staff meeting. I was convinced my name was going to be on there out of 1,000 people. You know what I mean? Like, what I'm bringing to the table. And I had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps up to this point, and I just had, anyway, so I have that. Melissa and I are living together, and I have no clue how to have a relationship at all. And so I become verbally and emotionally abusive. I really start to recreate what my dad was like with my mother, and I didn't know any other way. And it was really scary because I love Melissa, you know what I mean? But I have these images in my mind on how things should go. And when I really get honest about it, what they really relate back to is how I look. How does the world perceive me? And Melissa needs to fit into this little deal because she's an object for me. And I don't know any of these things. I just know me and her are fighting a lot. And I know that goes good for a while. And eventually I start to get this anger that builds and builds. And I start kind of taking inventory. And then next thing you know, I start criticizing and being mean and really, really mean with my words, you know what I mean? And hurtful. And I don't want anybody to know about it. I can't let anybody know about it, except for, thank God, my sponsor. I remember times where she'd be in the bathroom and I'd be screaming at her. She's sobbing and a sponsee would call me. And I'd stop, I'd answer the phone, and I'd go, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" And I would talk to him about, God, I was just living like a fraud. I was doing good when you were like building my ego. And then when that went away, I was just depressed and anxious and angry. And I was running every aspect of my life. And a part of that was Melissa. You know what I mean? She was just an aspect of me trying to manage. And, I ended up going back through the steps again. And I really my sponsor asked me what in my life I could manage. And I listed a whole bunch of things. And I read it to him, and he laughed so hard because he goes, "Dude, you call me like 3 times a week. Those things are on fire," and I'm so delusional. I learned a lesson. The things in my life I think I can manage are the most unmanageable. But he asked me the big question. The big question was, why do you think you have to? Why do you have to manage them? I'm 5 or 6 years sober. I'm going to meetings of AA, talking to all my sponsees about dependence on God. And when it comes down to it, my truth is that if I gave God my relationship, if I gave God my career, if I gave God all aspects of my life outside of AA and my sobriety, I'm going to be at the Salvation Army on a cot alone. That's my prejudice against God, right? We in AA talk about how we have a fear of the unknown. No, we do not. We have a fear of what we know is going to happen. You know what I mean? And I know what's going to happen. It's the worst case scenario. So I got to manage. And I started to have to redevelop and get rid of these prejudices that I have against God and myself. And part of that was with Melissa. And I'll give you a couple examples. I heard Polly and Dave P. talk one time about the fourth tradition in relationships. And they said that their job is to help their partner become the best that they can be, their partner can be, based on who God made them. And that wasn't how I was living. I was living like, I'm going to make Melissa be the best she can be to make me look good. You know, and Melissa is strong. She's a strong woman. She is not playing that game. She's like, I am me, you know? And so we would clash, and I would try to make her be that way. And I didn't know how to go change it. And, you know, so one of the things that's very different about Melissa and I is that I'm an extrovert, right? That's my personality type. I'm extroverted. I like people. And Melissa is an introvert. And so I didn't know that there was like a difference. I just thought introvert. I thought she was just self-centered and selfish. You know what I mean? Like, why are you weird around people? Why can't you just be like outgoing? You know, makes you look good. You know what I mean? Right. And so I remember one time trying to coach her on being extroverted. I'm like, so here's how you do it. This is how you know what I mean? This is how you really manipulate people to like you. And, you know, and when I heard that talk by those two, I started thinking about it. And I started learning about being introverted. And I thought, man, Melissa's different than me. She's different than me. That's how God made her. I think the best gift we can ever do is bring who we are to the table and give it away for free and for fun, you know? And here I am trying to change the person I love the most to fit me, you know? And by the way, I'm just going to sit back and tell you that I did a lot of work in Alcoholics Anonymous around these damaged ideas I have about relationships, and AA alone did not have the answer for me. I had to go to therapy. I had to get treatment for my like deep anxiety and my broken ideas. I needed professional help. And I think most people I know that come from that kind of background do that too. And that's cool. Like if they're there to help us. I needed it, you know, and but my job is to support Melissa. Melissa's introverted. Me and her are very different. She has the most in-depth, real relationships with people that I've ever seen. I admire it. I'm more of a guy, I'm friends with everybody. We talk kind of surface level, you know? I admire her vulnerability and her ability to be real. I want to be more like that, you know? And there's many other ways. I'm someone that likes to bury his head in the sand. I can be a coward at times, right? Hence the story she said about, yeah, we're going to therapy. Great, whatever. You know, like, Melissa's not. She's not. And for a long time, I didn't like that because she would be honest with people and people would get mad at her. And then I would say, well, now they're mad at me. And I would get mad at her. How unfair. My wife would stand up on spiritual principles, and then I would get mad at her instead of getting mad at other people or holding them accountable for when they got mad at Melissa. I just made so much of my relationship about me, you know? And in my job, I remember one day I got in a really, really bad fight with Melissa, and it was late at night. She was sleeping. It was probably 2 or 3 in the morning. And this had been going on for a while up to this point. I remember laying in bed, and she was like facing in the direction. She was sleeping. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I was like, why do you suck so bad? Like, you love her. You're this guy in AA that presents this image. People look up to you, and no one knows what's really going on in your life. No one knows how you're really hurting her or how you really act. You're such a loser. You're such a nut. You know, all that conversation was happening, right? And then this thing came to me, and it said, man, like this woman, right? We have one life, and marriage is like joining our souls together in union with God. And she's got one person she can choose to do that with. She can do that with anybody. And she has a choice. And she made that choice to be with me. And I kind of had this experience where, like, not in a codependent way, but in a way of like, Melissa's given me responsibility for her soul in a way. And not like in a weird codependent way, but kind of like, it's a great responsibility to be in a marriage with somebody, you know? And here I am like hurting her. And here I am trying to change her. You know, and I just had this experience where I just was like, God's like, what a responsibility. And I just felt this overwhelming love for her. You know what I mean? And this desire to grow and become rid of these things that get in the way of it. And I could tell you, you know, I'll sum it up in a nutshell is that the things that really get in the way of it for me is immaturity and broken ideas. You know what I mean? I don't know how to have communication about my feelings, right? Melissa and I will have a conversation about something, And I immediately have fear jump in and tell me what I think she's going to say at the end. And I react to my fear. And guess how she responds? She responds based on my fear. And then we have a fight. And I'm like, see, you can't ever talk to me. And the reality is I can't, if I go to Melissa and tell her, I think like start criticizing her, it's a lot different than going to her and saying, you know, I really feel bad about this. I'm really anxious about this. This is really, really hard for me. Can we talk through this? You know what I mean? Like I had to learn how to communicate in a way that's different than like a 10-year-old boy, you know? I had to learn how when I don't feel good, when I feel uncomfortable, that it's not for me to use her to take that out on and start a fight with, you know what I mean? It's for me to go to her and I can share and be vulnerable and transparent with her. And I'm going to tell you the people that helped me the most with that was therapy and then Men and Alcoholics Anonymous. For a long time, I was around a lineage of men in AA that you just always carried the message. You never were real. And I ended up going to this retreat called The Usual Suspects in Tennessee. And I met these men in AA that were so real and vulnerable. And they had 30 years sober. And they talked, actually the first year I went, Don was talking with Sheldon. And Don talked about his story of the stuff he talks about with his wife and different things. And it broke me open. And it created this desire to grow deeper into being human, if you will, you know what I mean? And being okay with my humanness. And a lot of that has allowed me to become there at Melissa. It's been very slow progress for me, but it's been progress nonetheless, you know what I mean? And I feel like my job, my role, right? We talk about the fifth tradition of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? It's like, what's our role and what's my purpose? And I feel like my role is to support and love Melissa, to help her become the very best person that she wants to be with her relationship with God, and to have her back and bring me to the game. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of things I had to let go of to allow me to do that. So that's what I'll talk about that. I'll kick it over to you, Melissa.
Okay. Thanks, Alex. Hi again, guys. So like we just, we were going to talk about like autonomy and who we are and being ourselves. And Alex talked about that a little bit, right? Like he likes to try to make me to be an extrovert or make small talk with people. I will say that it's a lot of like right of participation and right of decision, like, who I am and what I get to do. And that Alex is not in charge. And so we've grown in how that works. And I've grown in how I say that to him. And I'll just tell you a story about how like our autonomy allows us to be a team, that we can do things together, right? Like what one of us lacks, the other one has. And that my brother Michael has like always had like alcoholism and drug addiction and mental illness and was always in and out of my life. And my mom called me one day and he had been beaten up by a coworker friend. And so he was in the hospital. He was unconscious. His like ribs were broken. They had kicked his kidneys in half. His spleen had to be removed. He was on a ventilator. He was unconscious. Just what life looks like. About every year and a half, my mom would call me and tell me some other version of that story. So my brother came to stay with us for a little bit. Maybe he would want to get sober. Plus he was homeless again. And, he was here at my house for a weekend, and we had gone to a AA wedding, and my brother was here, and my brother brought his dog with him. And I didn't always actively love my brother anymore, but I loved his dog. He had a dog, Rocky, who was an 100-pound bulldog. I just loved him so much. He was kind of scary looking, but he was really wonderful. And so we come home and it's Labor Day weekend and my brother is not here, which is fine. My brother disappears, but he's gone and he's gone and he's gone and he's gone. And I'm like thinking, I wonder if he got arrested, my brother, which happens. And I think like it's Labor Day weekend. Like what if Rocky's been arrested too? Rocky is his dog. And so my brother can handle being in jail. I don't want Rocky to be in dog jail, right? He's been arrested before and taken to dog jail, which is the pound. And so I think like I should see, maybe I'll look at my brother's stuff. Maybe I can find out where he might be. My brother was sleeping on my couch and he had all of his belongings in a plastic tote. And I went to go look through his stuff. Really what I was looking for is my brother was very addicted to opiate pain medication. And I thought like, I wonder if there's stuff in his box that might tell me where he is in the city of Rochester, New York. Like I know where you go when you have to get something for opiate pain medication. And there was nothing in his stuff that I was like looking for, like, bags or things like that. But I did found like a gun in his stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like I brother has a gun. Here's my brother. He has alcoholism. He's addicted to drugs. He's mentally ill. He's sleeping on my couch. His clothes are in a plastic tote, and he has a gun with him. And I just stopped in this moment and saw like my life. Like when I hit my bottom with alcoholism, I was sleeping on the couch. It was actually a love seat, which is harder to sleep on. I was sleeping on the couch. My clothes were in a plastic tote in the broom closet of someone else's apartment. And I hated myself, and I hated my life, and I hadn't been able to stop drinking. And now in my sobriety, I'm living in my 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house in a suburb while I drive an SUV, and my brother is still living on a couch with his clothes in a plastic tote box. And I was speaking that weekend at my home group on the 9th concept. We have like once a month the speakers on traditions and concepts. And I realized in that moment that like, I don't like get asked to speak about those things because I'm an enthusiastic speaker. I'm not just a good speaker. Like I need all of AA. Like I need all of it. I need the concepts. It's not an option thing for me. I used to live on someone's love seat with all of my belongings in a tote box, and I waited every day to die. And I just saw my alcoholism like in my brother's stuff on my couch. Like this is what it is. This is what it would look like. And I need all of AA. Like I need my stool to have all 3 of those legs. They need to be balanced and active, and I need to not fall off of it. My brother wasn't in jail, and they came home like the next day, and Rocky was safe. And so that's that story. But my brother stayed for like another 6 months, and he was nuts. He was nuts. You know, he would sleep for 2.5 days, then he'd be awake for 2.5 days. Sometimes he wasn't sober. You know, when he was nice to me, he just wanted some money. And so I just did what I did, and I just stopped talking. I remember Alex said, you should really address your brother. You should ask your sponsor about that. You don't even speak to him. And Alex is not me. And Alex is this like very like vivacious, joyful, energetic, outgoing person. And he loved my brother. He called my brother Big Mike. He would come in the house. He would see my brother on the couch watching the History Channel. And Alex would say, Big Mike, what's up? And like my brother would laugh at him. Like my brother has died since then. And at my brother's funeral, nobody that was for him came there. It was my family members and my people in AA. And Alex treated him like a human being, and he loved him, and he gave him a nickname. Nobody had given him a nickname in years. You know, the last time my brother called me, he had moved out of our house because, you know, he just couldn't be sober and couldn't be with us. But he moved into a furnished apartment that my parents paid for. He moved out of our house, and the last time he called me, I saw that he was calling me, and I didn't really want to talk to him, and I didn't answer the phone. And the next person he called right away was Alex. And Alex answered the phone, and Alex talked to him. And I was in a meeting that I went to on a regular basis. I try to go to meetings regularly, 3 times a week, if not more. And a couple of days had gone by, and I'm at this meeting. And then in the parking lot of the meeting is when my aunt gets on the phone with me and tells me that my brother has died. And I first of all, I mean, that's how God works my life. Like my brother lived a life where, you know, if you're addicted to opiates today, you are really increasing your chances of not being able to live, you know, and that was what it looked like. But like I found out in an AA meeting, like how does that work? Like God makes that work. You know, I called my parents and told my parents, and my mom had always like lived in this like fear of like the day the police knocked on the door to say that they had found his body. And it was a different experience for my mom, for me to call her and not the police to show up. And I went home to my house that night, and I like, once I was like through like the shock of it and I started to cry, I just like looked at the fact that like, first of all, my brother had come to live with me, and I had about, I think, 15 years sober then. And most of my sobriety, I didn't know where he was. We didn't know where he was. I didn't know him. My brother had come to live with me, and he came to my favorite place in the world, which is not Disney World, but it's my home group, Love and Service. He would come there, and he didn't have a problem, and he knew nobody was sober. But the people saw him and said, I think that guy has a problem. And they would give him cigarettes and give him coffee, and he would go out to eat. And Alex talked to him every single day. Alex answered his last phone call. Alex invited him over. Alex would watch football with his AA friends and his sponsees and let my brother come with them. Alex would throw a football to him. Alex would invite him. All of the things that we did, he would include him, and he would love him, and he would give him a nickname. And I saw my brother smile 100 times in like the last year of his life because of Alex, and I didn't have that to give to him. My personality is different. The relationship was different, and so I just think a lot about like how we are a team and we work together and we can complement each other. We can be autonomous, right? We can make decisions on our own, but like for the general well-being of like the group or the whole or the home or their family, like we can come together and say like, how can we do this together, right? Like not what I want, not what you want, like how can we do it together? And it happens sometimes without me even thinking about it or realizing it. You know what I mean? My brother said, can I have some money to make an oil change? And God said, do not give him your credit card, Melissa. And I ignored God and I gave it to him. And a couple days later, he had spent $300 at CVS, Taco Bell, and an oil change place. And it was Christmas time and I was mad at him. He was living in my house and he had no money. Of course he did that. And my brother had brought us Christmas presents, which he either sold his his medication, his opiate medication. He either sold his stuff to get those things or he stole it from us. And I was mad at him. I didn't give him a Christmas present, and the next Christmas he was dead. And I thought like, God, you need to give people Christmas presents, like you need to like continue to grow and move past this. And I just tell the story because like my life would be different if it wasn't for Alex. Like we work together. Our autonomy makes us who we are, but we were able to work together as a group. And I'll tell you that my family, my parents have a lot of peace in their heart because of who Alex is and how he treated my brother. They had lost that over the years to be able to give that to him too. And I will say there is a huge, 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 huge part of Alex that has made so much growth with realizing like who I am as a person. He kind of lived underneath that concept that women should be like pretty and nice and kind of quiet. And I'm not quiet. We went out to dinner with two of our AA friends the other day, and the girl started talking about the guy and how like he has like some eating like issues, right? He's always dieting and he's ketoing and he's fasting and then he's overeating. And she brought it up and she was talking about it and the guy friend was talking about it and Alex was talking about it. And I said like, oh, I've always had stuff with food, like too much of it, not enough of it, peanut butter cups for every meal. Here's some of the things that I learned. And he got kind of mad. The guy got kind of mad and his girlfriend said, are you going to be mad at me? He's like, I'm not going to be mad at you. I'm like, hey, dude, just listen, just do this. Just get mad at me. That's what everyone does. Just get mad at me. It's okay. Someone's always going to be mad at me about what I have to say. And I have learned like through sponsorship, like how to work my words so that they don't automatically make people mad at me and how to make amends for things like that. But it's been Alex too, like where this growth to like realize like who I am as a human being and for us to be a team. So it's just about 6 o'clock on our time, which is I think 3 o'clock your time. And I know that we're going to have a break. So thank you so far for listening to us.
Wow. Thank you, Alex and Melissa. Okay, it is 2:58.